this is Michael on YouTube Guitar Tutorials on YouTube, and this video is going to go over a comparison of a Vox AC-30 1964 top boost on your right with a Matrix GT1000FX power amp into a Matrix NL212 212 cab on your left. The Matrix power amp and cab are being powered and driven by the Axe FX2 XL preamp by Fractal Audio. A lot of people wonder and debate as to whether digital simulation and technology can get you the tones of a real actual tube amp. Taking that a step further, some people have claimed that the high gain distorted drive sounds of simulated models sound great and can get perfectly close and exact to original amplifiers like Marshall's, but on cleaner amps and cleaner tones it's a little more difficult. In this case, I'm going to prove that there's virtually no difference between digital simulation done by the Axe FX and a Vox AC-30 1964 very expensive vintage amp. What I'm going to do is do a blinded test here. First, I'm using the pretty decent microphone on my camcorder. It's not great, but it should do well. We'll test it out here. I'm going to place the camera in front of one of these two amps, and I'm not going to tell you which one I'm going to place it in front of. And I'm going to play some very basic notes and chords. I am then going to move the camera and place it on the second amp. You don't know which one it's going to be. I'm going to put it in about the same place, facing the second amp, and I will play the same notes and chords. Now, of course, there's no way I can play each note when I test each amp. I cannot play the exact same strength and picking volume with my hand, but I will do the best I can to not play too soft or too loud and play the same when I play through each amplifier. Let me first explain before we go forward how I have these set up. I have one preset on the Axe FX. That preset has an effects block, and that effects block just goes out the output 2 and into the Vox that you see on the right. So there's no effects, there's no cabs, there's no amps, there's nothing. It's just guitar to Axe FX, FX, effects block out of output 2 into the Vox. That is a scene. The second scene of the same preset is an amp model that I have built. I've used just the amp block. I have not used the cab. And the guitar goes into the Axe FX. It goes through my AC-30 top boost amp model block. There is no cab. It goes outside the Axe, out the irregular outputs, the XLR outputs, to the Matrix GT1000FX power amp, and the power amp goes to the NL212 cab on the left. I am again not using any cab models or IRs. What I did was compare these two amps, and I assumed, obviously, that the cab on the left, the NL212, is not the same as the silver speakers and cab in the Vox on the right. But what I did is I made adjustments to only the amp cab model in the Axe FX to compensate for the tonal differences in the two cabs. So in summary, the Vox on the right is just guitar to Vox. The amp on the left is guitar to Axe FX amp model with no cab model into the power amp and into the NL212 cab. The reason I did not use a cab model is because the NL212 is actually a real cab. It is not an FR cab. So therefore it does color the tone. If you're using the exact same amp model through the cab on the left and the cab on the right, if you weren't using the Vox power amp and preamp, if you were only using these as cabs, they would sound different. What I've done is adjust my amp model in my AX-FX to adjust for the differences between these two cabs. Therefore, as the end result, I have the AX model going into a power amp and NL212 cab sounding, I claim, 95% plus, maybe 98%, the exact same as the Vox. Now, there is no way to get it 100%. I am not using any tone matching here. I am not using any tricks. All I'm doing is using my ears to adjust all the parameters on the AX-FX amp model to compensate and get as close of a tone to the Vox AC-30 that's possible on the right. As you're going to see, I'm doing a blind test, and I'm not going to tell anyone here which is which. And I would ask that you post a comment on this YouTube video and vote which is which. Again, they're not 100% perfect, but the question is, can you tell the difference? One other thing to note, almost every Vox vintage amp sounds different than the next one. The reason is they're old, they used different parts like different trannies, different transformers from different manufacturers, and the capacitors and resistors and other electronic parts sometimes drift off of their original values. So usually, if I was to put two Vox 1964 amps right next to each other here and do the same test, you would hear two different tones. They would not be the same. Now I have the treble and bass, and the bass cut, the treble, and the bass knob set at a certain value on this Vox, and I've kept it there, and I've modeled the AX to come as close to those settings as possible. Certainly with the Vox you could turn a few knobs and get different tones, but in general it has a very fixed tonal footprint. However, with the AX-FX amp model, it's very sophisticated and has many parameters that you can adjust to model and get any tone you want. The point I'm trying to make is the Vox, if you had two Voxes here, they'd be both different. They'd be subtly different, and you could tell the difference. Here, I'm going to have a Vox with modern digital technology. You'll hear difference, but the issue is, or the question is, can you hear the difference and know which one is which? I would claim you cannot. Therefore, the AX-FX has done what no other digital modeling technology has ever done. It can indeed model any amplifier, clean or high gain distortion, perfectly. Now, of course, if you don't like one or the other tone, or you're biased, you can always adjust the AX-FX to get something else that you like better. With the Vox, you can't do that other than move a couple knobs, the three different tone knobs. With that introduction, let's do the amplifier shootout and comparison. Here we go. Gonna go with amp quote number 1. I'm gonna blank out the video when I edit it, and you're not gonna know which amplifier I'm moving the microphone to. And we're gonna play some very basic notes and chords. Okay, this is amp number 1. Fender Stratocaster with Kinman pickups in quack position, bridge and middle pub. Second amplifier, same notes. First amplifier, quack position still, different chords and notes. A D, a C, and a G. Second amplifier, same chords. amplifier. A few notes. Second amplifier. Same notes. One more test. Change pickup to neck position. Amplifier 1. Same chords, guitar neck position, amplifier 2. One more test. Moving up the neck to some higher notes. Back in quack position. Amplifier 1. Amplifier number 2. Final test, amplifier number 1, basic E major chord. Amplifier number 2, basic E major chord. So there you go. That's a comparison of a 1964 Vox AC-30 top boost, vintage amp, with original speakers, original parts, just with some minor upgrades, compared to an AXFX2 XL by Fractal Audio with Matrix's GT1000FX power amp and NL212 cabinet. Now remember, the cabinet on the left is very different than the cabinet on the right. Different speakers, different build, different resonance, different everything. There's no way they're going to be 100% just because of the cabs. But you also have a 1964 vintage amplifier and preamp on the right, and you have a very high-tech, latest technology power amp and AXFX on the left. If I didn't know which was which, there is no way I would ever be able to tell the difference between these two amps. What's great about Fractal's technology is that you can use the Fractal AXFX2 with any power amp and any cab, and you can adjust only the amp model block to get the exact same or very close, 95% plus, the same tone as any vintage amplifier. There is no need to spend a lot of time and effort using cab blocks and IR frequency responses, which are great and work fantastic with the AXFX. But if you're going to play live, I prefer simplicity. And what this video proves is all you need is the AXFX2 with its very powerful amp modeling block and a high-quality power amp like the Matrix and a high-quality cab with a fairly neutral response. I hope this helps anyone who's a naysayer out there with regard to Fractal Audio's AXFX2. I have this 1964 Vox AC-30 for a long time, but it's just not, it's heavy. It doesn't have the ability to change a lot of the parameters like the Axe does. But with the Axe, you can get the same tone or very close to it, and you can adjust it to your liking. And the cab is lighter, the Matrix power amp is lighter, the AXFX2, they all weigh less than probably this Vox amp. So for any gigging professional, it just doesn't make any sense anymore to use real amplifiers. And with the AXE-FX2, what's fantastic is I could take the AXE-FX, I could come up with an entire different amp model like a Marshall. I can use this cab, I can put this cab up against a Marshall amp, and then I can change the Marshall amp model's parameters to adjust for the difference between the tone of a real cab in a Marshall amp and this cab. So I only need this cab for any tone I want. You don't need to use the cab models and the IRs to adjust your cab tone. You can definitely put those as EQs in your chain in your AXE-FX2, but you don't have to. You can simplify, use this cab or any cab you choose all the time, and just change the amp model block parameters to your liking, and you can hone in on any tone. Again, there was no tone matching used on this video. This is Michael on YouTube Guitar Tutorials. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful.